Okay, so hello and welcome to this week's spiritual journey. I welcome today Mark Periklis. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Lindsay. Thanks for having me on.
You're more than welcome. So, Mark has been a lawyer, a property developer, still is, but his interest has always been in the esoteric. So, generally, for me, Mark, with my guests, I just happen across people and I'm like, oh my God, I love what you're saying. I love the content you're putting out. And I always feel that I need to speak to people in order to share their spiritual journey to help others. So you were quite active, or you came into my Facebook group and you shared some stuff about astrology, and I was like, oh my God, this guy knows his stuff. So can you sort of tell me a bit about how you got into astrology in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I got into it, Lindsay, when I was very young, but I always denied myself the full interest simply because I concentrated on being a lawyer on the 3D world, which was far more immediate for me. And other astrologers, their demographic was very different to mine, and I really didn't feel I could fit in. I mean, we're looking at the 1980s, 1990s. Of course, things are different now. You've got doctors who are astrologers, quantum physicists who are astrologers, you've got people in the city, and it's much more, people just bolt onto their career now. But during those early days, it was very much for me, it just didn't fit in with my image of what my life should look like. I had an interest in it, but I kept it very quiet because people still have a prejudice against it anyway. They think you're anything to do with the esoteric. People are getting round to it, especially now where people are going within during this crisis. However, there's still those types that are rigidly, doggedly hold on to the 3D world, thinking that science is their God, and not willing to open up to anything else. There's a lot of rigid thinkers in the science community.
Were you worried at the time, so like obviously being a lawyer, it's deemed it's a very serious profession. So were you worried that people would sort of take the mick out of you, call you names and be like, call you weird, etc.?
Well, I obviously was, because I never shared it with anybody. I got on with it. I did it. I did my law degree. I then, studied, worked in the city, then in the West End, then set up my own law firm in 2002. And that was it, really. From there, it was really all about that. I've always been interested where the planets are, the transits and what's going on and how I was impacted. But I always sort of thought, well, I know it's there, but at the same time, I will not focus on that. And that was it. And of course, one always comes to anything like the esoteric in life when I think a person faces a crisis. One sees the 3D world and says, this is not enough. There's the answers here are not fulfilling. And you get despondent. Well, I was getting despondent, but I'm talking collectively as well. I was getting despondent. I was getting disappointed. I had, my career was coming to an end. And in 2016, I went back into it and I thought, you know what? I sold my practice. Everything was starting again. I thought, I don't really care anymore. This is the way forward. I don't have to answer to anybody. And luckily, the world moved on as well since then. I mean, the esoteric is something which is far more accessible now. And I think what's helped that is the internet age. And everybody is sharing information. In fact, there's almost too much information now. Some better than others, of course. Some bogus, some very good. And also people are YouTube stars and they are effectively sharing their stuff. And we can all hop on that bandwagon and do that stuff, and we can all share that stuff. And it's much more, the access points are a lot easier now with far less prejudice than it was, let's say, even 20 years ago.
So how did you manage at the time? Because I'm sure that there are people at this time in 2020 who are like, you know what, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a very 3D version of myself, but I might be practicing witchcraft, or I might be an astrologer, I have these beliefs. So how did you manage to sort of integrate the two and to be sort of like both this practical lawyer in the 3D world, but also have the interest in astrology? How did you manage to be both?
I think I've never really separated them. They've always been part of me. I just never spoke about it. I am not a 3D. I mean, I love business. I do business. I find it very empowering, and I love entrepreneurship. But at the same time, there's more to me than just about that, as there is, with yourself as well. We're much more than just being that. There's the esoteric. There's stuff out there which we don't even understand, and people are scared to ask the questions, and they're even scared not even to have the answer. First of all, you've got to ask the right question. And the question is one which is predicated on, I'm not happy. What is the question about myself? The question about myself could be, this does not working, doesn't make sense. What's this all about? Then once you start being authentic about that, then you can start asking the questions about the world. Then you start asking these questions and you start to find there's no answers in the normal 3D reality. The answers are in the esoteric field. And that's where a lot of people stop. They stop there and they think, okay, that's enough. But then there's another stage where you then integrate it, and you start to see the fruits of integrating it to such an extent that it starts to become even more real than the 3D world. And that path is a path that very few people cross, actually, because everybody, Lindsay, everybody is spiritual now. It's now replaced the church. Everybody's spiritual. It's a meaningless term, because anybody that does tarot, everybody that just reads the horoscope, everybody that does a bit of is clairsentient, clairvoyant, even if people just observe synchronicity, they all call themselves spiritual, but it's not spiritual. Spiritual is really embracing the vibration of something which is beyond our sphere of our senses, of our conventional, traditional senses, and it's seeing stuff beyond that. I like astrology because it's a very modular system that you can integrate it into finance, into medicine, into synastry when you do relationships, transits. So when you do someone's natal chart, there's at least 25 different areas of astrology that are out there, maybe more.
So how did you get into astrology in the first place? Like, did you get into it before you became a lawyer, or?
Yes, I did, Lindsay. I mean, look, it happened when I went through a crisis when I was very, well, when I was young, when I was about 16, 17, and I thought, wow, I had a relationship breakup. Then I also had, my first love or whatever it was, and I also, I was doing my O-levels at the time, or my A-levels, I can't remember now, it was such a long time ago. And it's like, things just weren't making sense. And I was looking, and I started reading my sun signs, which of course is only a rough indication. It's very, very, it's just like saying you're a spiritual person. It doesn't really mean anything. But I started to see some correlations, but that wasn't enough to enroll me. I had to then test it. And I started to test it. But then I was reluctant to go into the inner world, because the inner world would bring me into that space which I wasn't prepared to deal with at that time. So I put it on the back burner and continued with I still paid homage to it and respected it, but I then went on with my 3D world and became a lawyer. I did property development, and I'm glad I did, to a certain extent, because it's grounded me. Because if I do too much esoteric stuff, I mean, even today, I need to go back into property and law to ground myself, and vice versa. If I do too much of that stuff, I feel very almost that, well, what's the meaning between all these? If I'm doing 3D stuff, well, there's got to be more than that. But I'm talking with language, and language is a very poor form of communication to convey the feelings that and the rainbow of the feelings I went through and the depth. I'm just saying the best way I can convey it was in those terms. I felt a crisis. I thought the only way I could understand it was through astrology, and with astrology, I then understood it, but I then put it on the back burner to get on with my so-called main career.
Yeah. So, and I do feel like, you know, there are many of us who have done that, who are like, right, we're going to forget about the spiritual stuff when we're younger and we'll go into mainstream stuff. So, you know, I went into Tesco, I went and worked there as a retail manager, yeah. And I remember like just, oh yeah, it was an experience, you know, I enjoyed it. But for me now, it's my children who ground me and who keep me really grounded to this 3D base. So just for anyone who's watching this, when you are talking about the 3D, Mark, can you sort of talk a bit about what it is that you mean?
Well, the 3D is the world that you can pick up with your senses. You know, you can touch it, see it, feel it, smell it, taste it. You know, that's the 3D world. And a lot of people, that's their world, right? And we see what is going on at the moment. People just see it as some sort of crisis, and they don't see a bigger picture. I'm not into conspiracy theories as well, but there is something greater at large that's going on. I mean, I predicted something going on back in June last year. I said, you know, something's going to happen in 2020. It could be a reevaluation of society. But yes, to get back to the original question, it is the 3D world is the world that we pick up from our senses, and it's something which we can't really deny. But I mean, you know, you could look at the 3D world as we could all be hooked up into a matrix with our brains, and even the 3D world is an illusion as well. If you want to really go there, I mean, we could all be hooked up to a mainframe computer or even some sort of biological consciousness, and even the 3D world is an illusion as well.
Yeah, so you said that you predicted this. So there was stuff that I was getting as well last year about this year. And, you know, someone asked me today, they said, did you see this coronavirus or this time coming? And I was like, well, sort of. I was like, I was told, you know, that the structures would fall and the patriarchal system would collapse. I said, but they didn't say to me, you know, there's going to be a virus and there's going to be this and there's going to be that. They don't give me specifics. Yeah. So this year, 2020, up in the stars, the planets, a lot of planets are retrograde, which means that they're going backwards. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like an optical illusion. It's like when you're on a train, for example, and you see another train carriage next to you, and one's going faster than the other, or you're passing it. They're both moving, but one's moving faster than the other. It looks like the other, from your perspective, is going backwards, but they're not going backwards. Oh, okay. It's all from the perspective of Earth. It's from a geocentric position, not a heliocentric, you know. So it's from the Earth position, they're going backwards, but they're not. But planets going backwards in astrology, it means going over old ground, whether it's in the 3D world or whether it's something in your memory. And a lot of planets have been going backwards this year. I mean, today, the 12th of July, is when Mercury stationary and starts to going direct now, and it won't go out of its shadow. It won't go out of its shadow period until I think later in the month, 27, 28.
So what does that mean for us as a collective?
So the shadow period is, if you look when a planet comes in, let's say it comes in, it goes there, then it goes back, then it goes forward again. But that point where it was its point. It needs to go past that original point. So it's still going forward, but the shadow period was the period it was where it was before, and it's got to go past those degrees. I mean, look, it's fine. It's going forward, but you're just going to be aware that some things could still happen. I mean, I still do stuff in a Mercury retrograde. Although having said that, when it went retrograde, the first couple of days, my alarm clock stopped working. I signed documents that weren't received. I had a problem with my bank. What else happened? A lot of things did happen, but they were resolved within the Mercury retrograde period. But that's when it started going at the very beginning, which is when they start to either go stationary, retrograde, or stationary direct. They're the most sensitive times, you know.
I was going to say, because there's a lot of people, like, and I've noticed this, especially on social media over the last 12 months, especially, it's like, oh my God, Mercury retrograde's coming, and there's this massive panic, and it's like, your computers are going to break, your cars are going to break, everything's going to break, you know, and collapse. And it's like, I've read about it, and obviously it obviously depends on where your own sign is, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, look,
And it
It's
doesn't really,
become a meme. Everybody uses it now. It doesn't really mean
yeah,
anything.
it doesn't affect me.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I say that, it probably does.
well, you've got to look at where Mercury is in your chart, where it is,
Yeah.
where it's affecting by transit the houses of your chart, and where it is natally in your chart and what it will do. It's in Cancer at the moment, so it's in a water sign. It's not very happy there.
Yeah.
Retrograde is like being in treacle, you know, it just doesn't think clearly at all. But it all depends where it is in the house and what it's touching. You know, you've got to look at, it's a layer upon a layer upon a layer. And it's very much like the pandemic. You can't really predict it. You can predict in society something will happen. You can predict, let's say something. I mean, look, in April 2018, I was broken into, right? I got burgled. I looked at the chart and there was Uranus, which is the planet of breakthrough, opposing my sun. So it was a direct opposition, not only to the degree, to the minute. And on that day, that's when it happened. Now, I saw that and I thought, what could this mean? And I thought, well, it could mean there was some business stuff going on. There was a few blockages and a few problems. And I thought, that's what it is. So I got the general theme, but I couldn't get the specifics. Now, the problem is, it all depends how you view the world. If you're very deterministic and you really believe that everything is laid out in front of you, which is, it's more of an Eastern philosophy than a Western philosophy, where we believe in the individual, you can only really see astrology, if you're a Western person, as themes like the harvest. If you're an Eastern person, you would grab it and say, oh, no, this is going to happen. And I've seen that happen and they get it wrong. So you've got to be very careful. The Western tradition is very much we're an individual. We do our own thing and we self-actualize. And when you look at these things, you've got to be very cognizant with your words, because it's a general feeling that you're trying to convey. And it's a symbolic thing. And you can't really categorize a symbol with words, because not only have you got to look at the person, their chart, what's going on in their lives, you've got to ask them what's going on in their head. And they might not even be aware of it. So, and sometimes it can express in a very internal way, because Uranus is all about a waking up and a trauma. It could be externally, where it could be breakthroughs, break-ins, things like that. You know, we've got Uranus in Taurus at the moment, which is, I see, and no astrologer is talking about this, but I see a Uranus in Taurus on a grand scale as the birth of the small entrepreneur. Taurus is to do with money, so people see the birth of Bitcoin and see things like that. But it's the birth, for me, of the entrepreneur.
I like that.
Because it's about money. Uranus is Uranian energy is a very entrepreneurship, because entrepreneur is not about money. It's about seeing opportunities, being of service to people. It's almost taking yourself out of the way so you can be with others. You can be transparent. That's a very transpersonal belief. That's a very, very Uranian. But Uranus next year will be squared by Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn will be blocking. It's very much, Saturn in Aquarius is very much, Aquarius is the people, the collective of the people. It's a very detached thing. And it's very much, we had when Saturn went into Aquarius, it's now gone back to Capricorn, we had the lockdown, locking down people's freedoms. It's now going to be squaring Uranus. So we're going to get the governments are going to have to encourage small entrepreneurs, because the traditional workplaces will disappear. I mean, God knows nobody wants to go in an office now and work, 2 or 3 feet from somebody. And that's a hotbed for germs. We don't want that. So I think more people are going to work from home. There's going to be more entrepreneurship. The government's going to be reluctantly helping people, and it's going to be some sort of tension there. And it's going to be, and because Saturn is a faster moving planet than Uranus, Saturn will be in Aquarius only for 2.5 years. Uranus will be in Taurus for another 6 years, 7 years in each sign. So it gives more of a context. So we're going to see the entrepreneur, we're going to see almost in fits and starts, the tension there, and we're going to see it happening, where governments are going to maybe help them, and, you know, maybe with apprentices, and people will be more self-employed, people will be working from home, and that's how it's going to go. And astrology can help you in these broad strokes, you know. Maybe you don't need astrology for it, but I think it's good to see what's going on, you know.
I think so I remember, like, I first got into working with the moon cycles in 2018, and then I bought a book by the same lady who'd written it called Astrology Made Easy, and I went through it, and it talked about, you know, where your sun sign is, where your moon sign is, your ascendant, and it made it quite simple and it broke it down. And I remember reading it to my friend going, oh my God, do you think this sounds like me? And my friend was like, yeah, totally. You know, and it said that, like, I was flirtatious and I was this. I was like, I don't see myself as a flirt. And my friend, he's known me for like 11 or 12 years. And he's like, you are so a flirt, Lindsay. And I was like, really? But I felt as if being able to look at where all these different signs were and these ascendants and everything else, it helped me to sort of understand my personality more. So with astrology, do you feel that it's something that everyone could really utilize in their own lives?
Of course, Lindsay. I mean, look, astrology is not for everybody. You have to be very, you've got to know yourself, and astrology's got to integrate with that. Otherwise, you will not leave the transits, and you'd be stuck with it and obsessed with it, and don't think you can get on with stuff. For some people who are very deterministic, they see it as the end of the world, and they won't get out of their bedroom unless the planets, and that's completely wrong. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
I mean, look, your sun sign is very basic. Know where your natal planets is in the signs is the second level. The third level is the houses that's in. The fourth level is the aspect.
Just going back to houses. So if someone's watching this and they've got no idea, what does a house mean?
So your ascendant will be your first house, right? Then the house, it depends what house system you use, there's about 30 or 40 house systems. That will be your first house, and your second house will be 30 degrees if you use equal house, and 30 degrees after that. So the 12 houses are 30 degrees each making 360 degrees of a circle, or 365 days. It's 1 degree virtually every day, okay, of the year. So the sun moves 1 degree every day of the year, and there's every 4 years it gets reset, you know, because it goes 1 day 6 hours or something like that, and it gets reset every 4 years. That's when we have leap years. So we've got your sun sign, you've got the signs all the other planets are in. That's the second level. The third level is the houses it's in. Then the aspects it makes. The aspects it makes is very, very important, because you could have T-squares in a chart, which is very common, and the T-square means you've got two planets at 90 degrees from each other and one at 180, so it forms 180 plus the one at 90. All the energy goes into that, it forms the apex, and it creates a lot of energy. And people just do that because that's the way they get their own way, you know. It's not, of course, you bulldoze people when you have a T-square, but it's something that you've got to look at, and it could dominate the whole chart depending what's there. I mean, I saw somebody's chart, you know, I do lots of charts, and the things you can pick up, I mean, I saw Saturn and I saw Mars in this woman's chart, and I said to her, Saturn, disciplinarian, asked her about her father, asked her if she likes discipline, and Mars is about the masculine energy. In a woman's chart, it's what she looks for in a man, or her masculine energy. And I said, it can either make you very entrepreneurial, very disciplined, which she was. I said, also, do you like men in uniform?
It's very specific.
Well, because Saturn is uniform, it's a tradition, and Mars is masculine. She dated a guy for 8 years in the army.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's all stuff like that. And it's very interesting to see how it all plays out. You see, you can get Saturn Pluto, for example, which is to do with military strategy, or somebody with a blood disorder, for example, that they get a because Mars is the can be blood outside the body or blood in the body, or heart disorders. And when Pluto's there, their emotional state depends on can affect their physiology, their blood state as well. So that's often happened. I've seen that, and I've seen it in people. But I'm not an expert in medical. I can just see stuff. But a lot of these things are allegorical. They're not literal. They are archetypal. And what archetypes are for your readers, for your listeners, is that they're symbols of, they're templates of human behavior. So the reason why people study Greek and Roman mythology is not because it's a quaint interest in history or classics, or even an insight into culture like literature. It's a template into human behavior. So and it's not even to do with astrology. I mean, Carl Jung and Jungian analytical psychology saw in people's dreams and free association, they saw these templates play out in people's lives, and they saw they had a resonance with mythology. And of course, all mythologies are the same. It's not just the European, or it's Nordic, it's South American, it's Inuit, it's Maori. They're all the same. They're all dressed up differently, you know. And these mythologies, they don't exist. They come up and they make a crack, and they can come up in our consciousness, but they live in the collective unconscious. You know, the collective unconscious. So if we're like pitons, we're like the mountains, we're the top of the mountains where we view everything. We go down into our personal unconscious, then we go to the collective unconscious, and we then all merge together. This is where Jung and Freud split, because Jung said that everything we're all connected on a deep level, we're all connected. And of course, he then saw so many things when he studied children's, South American children. He saw stuff before they even happened. They saw the Holocaust in the 1920s, when he went and did dream analysis of children. And the only thing that could make sense is people could see stuff in the collective unconscious that they never seen in their personal lives. And it's not only stuff that they never saw, it's stuff that could happen in the future. So it's almost a timeless. So the archetypes, that's where they live, but they come up from time to time, and they come up in all sorts of things. We see them in music. We see a Neptunian archetype, or in the film industry, where we see actors and they're resonant, or in music, or in comics, where we're almost mesmerized, and we're brought to, and we don't know why, and we call these people geniuses because they come up with stuff. They're just tapping in. Tap in. You need to get rid of your stuff. You need to get rid of your ego, because if you're in your ego, you're too up there. You're not going deep.
It's more you're in your head than in your heart.
Exactly. But you can be on your heart as well, Lindsay. But you can be on your heart with Venus, right? The moon and heart is Venus. It's still personal. When you go out to the outer planets, you've got Saturn and Jupiter, which are the social planets, right? But then you go to the collective planets, which is the collective unconscious, which is Uranus, which is Neptune and Pluto. You're dealing with very different energies which are not just us, they're beyond us. But when they affect us on a personal level, we can't deal with it. I've got a lot of personal planets touching my outer planets, right? So I would be called an outer planet person. A lot of people have that as well. But when I was growing up, I didn't have a role model to follow. A lot of people have role models, and they can attach to that role model, which is very Saturnian, right? I never had that. So I had to create my own role model, which I didn't, because you can't create your own model, but I created my own way.
It's funny, Mark, on that. When I've just finished my second book, and I was writing about role models, and I was exactly the same. I was like, I never really had a strong role model growing up. So you take aspects of others, and you're like, oh, I admire that person and then that person, and you make your own. But I wanted to ask you as well, because I don't know much about this, and I feel like, you know, it's something worth exploring. About is it Chiron or Chiron? How do you say it?
Chiron.
Chiron. What is that, and what does it mean? So I've seen, again, lots of social media stuff about it being like a wounded healer, and a lot of wounds are going to be coming up for people. What does that mean?
Chiron is the wounded healer, and you've got to look at Greek mythology for his archetype. It was discovered in 1977. It's in mythology, he was hit by a bow, and his heel was he was damaged, and he was always in constant pain, but he could never die because he was a god. If you have Chiron in the 6th house, you're a healer. If you have it anywhere prominent in the chart, you're a healer, and you are aware of your own wounds, and you then see your own wounds, and you can identify those wounds in other people. So you then look to heal them. At the moment, I think it's in Aries, and I think it's going retrograde as well.
Yeah, that's what I read, until December.
Yeah, it's going retrograde. Yeah, the only thing I can say about Chiron, it being an outer planet, it's always very collective. Unless it touches your personal planets, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, you could say in Aries, it's very much a, I think it's in Aries, I can't remember, I have to check. But wherever it is, it will give you a general, I can check now actually, let's check. Let me just check, hold on a minute, let me just check where it is.
Because I think I remember, so my sun sign Scorpio, my moon is in Taurus.
Yeah, I've got my moon in Taurus as well.
Have you?
It's exalted, it's the best place for it.
I'm pleased. And I'm sure my Chiron is also in Taurus.
Yeah, so Chiron is in Aries, and it's retrograde at 19 degrees 9 minutes at the moment. So yeah, so the Aries is the individual archetype. Okay, now so I don't know where, do you know where's your ascendant, Lindsay? Do you know where your ascendant is?
I think it's Capricorn.
So if it's in Capricorn, it'd be in your 4th house, 4th or 5th house. So it would be to do with your domestic setup.
That would be very apt.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a very literal interpretation or a much slower interpretation, that you could be creating a healing space for people, or you could be writing about healing, which you're doing, or it could be you're dealing with something from your past or your domestic which you need to sort out. It could be very personal. Could be, it depends what other planets it's hitting. But
it sounds like the 3rd one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but Moon in Taurus, people with Moon in Taurus are usually very stable people.
Good.
I've got it there as well, and it's me. But Moon in Taurus can be a bit of a hillbilly unless it has other aspects to it, because it can just be sitting, eating, being at home, watching TV and stuff in their face. It can be that, but it's very much their surroundings. It's a very central placement, but also can be very lazy as well.
Do you feel that it's important for everyone to understand their birth charts and their star signs and their moon signs, etc., to understand themselves more, you know, as a human being? Because sometimes, you know, if someone's been told, for example, oh, you're lazy all their life, and their moon's in Taurus, and then there's those aspects, then it's sort of, you have these like aha moments, don't you? And these moments when you read it, and you're like, oh my God, that's why I am the way I am.
Well, okay, so you're getting to an existential question. The issue is, yes, I think when I see psychotherapists doing stuff and they're asking people, there can be you can be 2 years in therapy, and they ask you questions, and from the answers you give, they will elicit what's going on. But the answers you give could be based on something which you're not really aware of, or you are aware of it, but there could be something even below that which you're not aware of. The birth chart is a blueprint. I mean, Carl Jung was an astrologer. He never, of course, at the time, he never spoke about it, but he used to have people's charts. I could see stuff in your chart which you won't even be aware of, but I could say it and I could prod, and something will come up.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm an intuitive astrologer. So I think it's very much, yes, it's good, but it depends. It's like the Philosopher's Stone, the elixir of life. It's not for everybody, because if you start doing it, it can be almost, you can, not, what's the word I'm looking for? You could almost abuse it with yourself. You said, well, I'm this and that, I'm not going to do anything. They look at your transits, and you get what is known as transit anxiety. I've got Saturn coming to my moon. I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to have that and that. I'm going to have people, and that's no good either. We're here in the 3D world to play the 3D game, and astrology is for a practical purpose, and that's it. It's not to sit at home and be worried about stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I found, like, having that awareness of what is going on. So knowing Mercury's retrograde, I'm like, awesome. Yeah, I accept that, you know, this might happen, but I'm not going to worry about it. Then when Mercury goes direct, I'm like, awesome. When Venus went retrograde, and I kept reading saying, oh, people are going to come back from your past and you're going to have all these relationships. And I was like, I kept waiting, you know, for someone to turn up on my doorstep. And that didn't happen for me. But what happened for myself was that I dreamt about, like, literally every relationship I'd had in the past, and they came through in my subconscious rather than appearing in the physical. So I think, like you said, having that awareness of what's going on and being like, well, this could happen, but I'm not going to live my life waiting every day for that ex to turn up, or waiting every day for that communication to go wrong, or my laptop to fail, etc.
Yeah.
It's helpful, isn't it?
It's helpful, but it's not about prediction, Lindsay, and it's not. Look, Venus in retrograde would affect people differently.
Yeah.
Differently at different times. I mean, the big Venus retrograde in Scorpio was a tough one. That was in the fall of 2018, and a lot of people were feeling the pain. And maybe there was some image and some feelings that you got that were connected to that, which was 18 months ago. It could just be a feeling. It could be a dream. It will manifest in some way. It could be a physical manifestation, but that's just one way it could manifest. It could be feelings. You could be dealing with other stuff, because Venus deals with money. It could also deal with food. It could also deal with your emotional state as well as somebody turning up in your life. I mean, turning up in your life is just, something turning up in your life, I would look not just for Venus retrograde, I would also look for Uranus, because that's sudden, and what aspects Uranus is making, or is Mercury doing something to your chart. I will look at all that, and even then, it might not be someone turning up. It might be, you might get an epiphany moment with regard to how you are in relationships. And it will transform you so much when the next transit happens, you get the relationship that you want. Yeah, it's not about determinism. It's not about being specific, and it's not about prediction. It's about seeing what's uncovering on a psychological level, on your personal unconscious, on the collective unconscious, and on how you interact with that, and how aware you are with it as well.
So if someone watches this, Mark, and they're like, right, I feel I really want to dive more into astrology, where would you recommend that they go first? Where do they start?
Oh, Lindsay, that's a good question. There's so many books. I mean, because there's about 25 different fields, right? I mean, if you want to start,
say for themselves, if they're like, I want to know more about me and my birth chart and my everything we've been told about signs, ascendants, houses, where's the best place for them to start?
First of all, you need to get your date of birth from the hospital, precise time of birth to the minute. Then there's basic books you can get on natal astrology, which is the astrology of your birth chart. Then you get to see where the planets are from your time of birth. There's some free astrological, I'm not going to do any advertising, but you just go on the internet, you see free astrology charts, you put your time and your place of birth, and to the minute, you get your chart, you see the symbols, you see all that. You then get some basic books. Again, no, I'm not going to do any advertising, but there's some basic books. You can find them on natal astrology. That's the subject matter. And you can then see, with that, you can then see stuff. Then you will start with the natal chart in the signs. Then you will then see the houses. That's your life, what happens in your life. Then you will then see the aspects it makes. Then you then see the planets where they are at the moment in transits, and how the planets touch you through your transits. You can then look at the progress chart or the directed chart, where one day is 1 degree a year for all the planets, and you can do that. You can see that, and then you can learn. Then of course countries have charts as well. You know, the UK is a Capricorn, America is a Cancer. Japan is a Libra. You know, I mean, they all have their own countries, have their own charts, and they all behave in a very similar way. I mean, I found out something very interesting the other day, that the NHS was born in July or late June, and of course, the UK birth chart is a Cancer sun, its moon in Cancer, and a Libra ascendant. So the moon is the NHS. It's the compassion. Capricorn is very class, very structured, and Britain led the world in its institutions. That's all Capricorn stuff. Okay, Cancer is very much about the moon is very much about the people, the heart, and the NHS in this country is almost our unofficial religion. You know, nothing to the NHS. It's like they don't touch it. You know, and the Libra ascendant is the politeness. You know, and it's very interesting. Then you will then see what's happening at the moment. So you got all these planets in Capricorn at the moment, which is affecting the sun of the UK, of course, you know, and as well as the US, as well as opposing the US sun sign as well. So all these countries are being affected, but the EU as well. Most institutions have a start date of the 1st of January, which of course is a Capricorn. So all these institutions would have a Capricorn ascendant, and you see how they'll get affected. And it's fascinating to see what's going on. I mean, you see the US chart has Pluto, I think at 0 degrees or first couple of degrees of Aquarius, and of course Pluto will be going over that point in the next couple of years. Either late Capricorn or early Aquarius. I can't remember where it is. So it's just called the Sibley chart. And you see, when Pluto goes back to its position after 240 years, things start to brew and start to come up. And we see that happening. You see, and that's called mundane astrology. It's a French word, mundane, the study of the world. And you start to see where what's happening with planets and with countries, and you start to see trends, and the trends of the 60s and of the 70s and what happened. So when Pluto was in Pluto and Uranus was in Virgo, we have flower power, and we had when Pluto then moved into Libra, we had the change of the divorce laws change in most Western countries. When it moved into Scorpio, Pluto moved into Scorpio, we had the AIDS epidemic. When that was in the 1980s. In the 1990s, when Pluto moved into Sagittarius, we had fundamentalism. And when it then moved into Capricorn in 2008, we had the financial crash, and it's still there. It's still there. And it won't leave until 2024. Goes in and out, you know.
Wow. So 50 years left.
And it's fascinating. You start to see trends of countries and of the collective as well. So we live with our charts within a collective of our countries, which form our baseline. So when I do a person's chart, I look at everything. I look at what they want, why they're asking me. I look at how they've developed. So your chart, Lindsay, you could have developed in all sorts of ways. You've chosen an esoteric route, but you could have chosen another route. So I look at why. So I look at you having a certain emphasis on the other parts of the chart. Even with somebody, you could have been born with a couple of other babies next to your mum, in the birth ward. They could have developed differently. So you look at how the person developed. Then you look at the country they're in. You look at, you're from Yorkshire. Yorkshire has its own flavour.
Newcastle, actually, Mark.
Newcastle. Sorry, Newcastle. Oh my goodness. My apologies.
It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it has its own cultural norms. So you look at that. That's very, very important. It's very different to the Southerners, you know?
Definitely.
Very, and you look at that. You look at that groundedness, that earthiness, which would emphasize your Taurus moon more than something else. So you would have to have your security in place first, which is very, which is much more than, let's say, somebody down south. Let's say you had your similar chart and you were born in Brighton, for example, which is all very airy-fairy, and you would have a your emphasis will be different. So you look at that, and the country you're in will form your baseline of where you are. So somebody going through financial problems with their chart in England would have a different person than, let's say, some of the poorer parts of Africa. Your baseline. So you've got to take all these things into account. That's why doing blind reading, I think, is very dangerous, because it's very deterministic again, and it's almost insulting the person, how they've developed. People have been with their charts for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I'm not going to ask you your age, Lindsay, but you know, you've been with your chart all your years.
Yeah.
Developed in a certain way, right?
Yeah. I know. So if, for example, so could someone have a reading with you, Mark, or is that something that you've chosen not to do professionally at this moment in time?
I don't charge, because when you charge, it brings money into it, and money lowers the bar. For me, lowers the bar. I don't charge because I don't need to charge. But I mean, apart from not needing to charge, I could charge, but I don't, simply because money, to me, you do something for something, you use money. Look, I've spoken to astrologers about this. They said you should charge because they've got skin in the game. I get it. People pay for your services. They've got something at stake. They will honor it. But for me, that's for them. For me, they've got skin in the game. They pay me. But I don't like money as a vibration when it comes to the spiritual stuff. So for them, they've got skin in the game. But for me, it doesn't work. If I feel they need a chart reading, I will talk to them and I'll do it for them for free. If I feel that they need to give me money, I will ask for money. But it's not a thing I tend to do, because it's a vibration which doesn't work for me. I know it sounds very weird, but
no, nothing. No,
it's not a thing that I'm not doing it for money. I'm not interested in money in that respect. I can do that perhaps because I've got other forms of income. And there's nothing. It's not something that I don't have an opinion on it. But for me, it's a personal choice. I'm really good at recommending people to. If my friend has a business, I recommend that business. That's it. If there's a referral system where I get money for it, all of a sudden I don't do so good. For some reason, it affects me. Money at stake, it affects me. It's unconscious, but it does. So I prefer not to do it for money. Now, someone give me money, they've got something at stake. It's good for them.
It's like an energy exchange. I mean, money and spirituality is a whole topic in itself. Do you know what I mean? That I could spend at least another hour chatting about. But so if somebody felt that they would really benefit from having a chart reading with you done, then they could obviously, can they just contact you?
They can contact me on your webpage. I mean, I'm on your Facebook anyway.
Yeah.
Contact me, and well done for creating such a great Facebook page.
Thank you.
Like-minded people, it's needed, Lindsay, as well.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you so much for your time and coming in to talk about astrology and everything else. It's been absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Wishing you well.
Thanks a lot. Lots of love.